Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is my 2025 NFL Mock Draft 1.0. I believe this is the first mock draft I actually have put up on the channel. I did a couple positional rankings a few years ago. Kind of talked about the draft here and there on my own channel and some other channels as well. But in the past, mainly I've just put up the mock draft like on my Twitter page or on Facebook. So hopefully you guys all enjoy this video. And with that being said, I have no trades in this mock draft. This is pretty much what I could see the teams doing. So it's more of a predictive mock draft, but I'll talk through some of the picks, talk through some of the players and everything else like that. Hopefully this video doesn't end up being too long. I know I can get on rambling from time to time. But if you guys would like to see more of these NFL mock draft videos, be sure to leave it down in the comments. Be sure to let me know which picks you liked, which picks you didn't like, and everything else like that. But without further ado, we're going to start off with the Tennessee Titans, #1 overall. And if I was the Tennessee Titans, personally, I would trade down from this pick. I could see them taking Abdul Carter if they think he's kind of that generational edge player. I know they've talked if there's a generational player out there on the board that they'll take the player. But I think if they go quarterback, it's going to be Cam Ward out of Miami. Quarterback 1 in this class. Not too much else to say here. Personally, I would not take Cam Ward #1 overall, but I do understand the positional value of quarterback. To me, he's kind of like a souped-up Tyrod Taylor, so a little bit better arm talent than like Tyrod Taylor, but has some of that same type of mobility. When I watch him play on film, he kind of plays like a Kyler Murray, but he doesn't really have that same high-end upside as Kyler Murray did when he was coming out. Then we move over to the second pick, and I have Abdul Carter going to the Cleveland Browns. Sounds like Myles Garrett is probably not going to be with the Cleveland Browns for next season, so they're going to replace him with the best edge rusher, potentially the best player in this class. So pretty easy selection here. Definitely do like Abdul Carter quite a bit. Then we move over to the Giants at #3. The Giants need a quarterback at this point in time. Daniel Jones did not work out. You know, there is Drew Lock, there's Tommy DeVito, but those guys are not going to save the job of Joe Shane and Brian Dable, which is pretty much what they need at this point in time. So Shedeur Sanders is going to be their guy. Me personally, I'm not as high on Shedeur Sanders as some other people. I would have like a late first round, early second round grade on him. But Giants a little bit desperate at this point in time. Not the greatest quarterback class overall. Definitely do understand the pick here, but you really need to get that offensive line right. Otherwise, it could be pretty rough for Shedeur Sanders, as we kind of see with him taking a lot of sacks in his days at Colorado. But definitely do like him as kind of a safe quarterback overall. He's a guy with a lot of experience, a guy that can make all the standard plays, but I don't think he's going to make a lot of the over-the-top plays at the end of the day as well. Then we move over to #4 with the New England Patriots, just taking the best player on the board at this point in time, Travis Hunter, cornerback / wide receiver out of Colorado. He's an athlete. He can do whatever you want him to do. If you have him and Christian Gonzalez, pairing them up at corner, it's going to be pretty good. Rolling him out on offense in a couple plays here and there would probably be the best case scenario for him. But, you know, if you really want to transition him to wide receiver full-time, definitely would understand that as well. So definitely do like the high-end upside of Travis Hunter and what he could potentially do for this Patriots team, which is lacking kind of star power at this point in time outside of young quarterback Drake May. Then we move over to Jacksonville Jaguars, have them taking Mason Graham, defensive tackle out of Michigan, one of the top players in this draft class, probably one of the safest players in this draft class overall. Pairing him on that defensive line with Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, and Eric Armstead, it's going to be pretty strong front four for them overall. Not too much else to say here. One of the safest picks, and, you know, with the new regime coming in, that's probably something that they're going to value at least early on in their tenure. Then we move over to #6 with the Las Vegas Raiders, and they don't have a quarterback at this point in time. They are pretty much left out of the top 2 guys. So I have them getting an offensive playmaker in Tetro McMillan, wide receiver out of Arizona. And I don't think enough people talk about this. The Raiders, you know, it's really just Jacoby Myers in terms of wide receivers. You know, Trey Tucker's all right, but beyond those 2 guys, they really had nothing this season whatsoever. You know, Brock Bowers, there's a reason that he set the all-time receptions record for a rookie and for a rookie tight end, everything else like that. Brock Bowers is by far a great player, but we need some offensive weapons around whoever is playing quarterback for the Raiders. And McMillan's going to fit the bill really well there. Gives you a potential X wide receiver, a wide receiver 1, which can bump Jacoby Myers down to his natural position, a wide receiver 2 alongside Brock Bowers. And all of a sudden you have some offensive playmaking weapons. Draft a running back in day 2. And all of a sudden this offense is starting to form itself together. You know, you got a running back, you got a couple wide receivers, you got an offensive line. Maybe you go after a quarterback, a veteran quarterback in free agency and see who you can get there. And all of a sudden you have an offense. And then at #7, we have the New York Jets. I got Will Johnson here, corner out of Michigan. Arguably the best corner in this year's class. DJ Reed's probably leaving in free agency, so filling in the need for quarterback 2 behind Sauce Gardner. Definitely do like this and the potential of replacing DJ Reed in a pretty big way, as well as forming a really solid tandem with Sauce Gardner overall. Not too much to say here. As long as Will Johnson's healthy at the NFL Combine, should be a top 10 pick overall. Then we get to number 8 with the Carolina Panthers. They could go wide receiver, but I think they're really going to go on the defensive side of the ball. This was by far one of the worst defenses in all the NFL last season, and they really struggled in terms of generating pass rush. So adding a freak pass rusher in Mike Green, edge out of Marshall, probably the highest you've seen him in any mock draft so far, coming off a really strong Senior Bowl, coming off a really strong season, bulked up to 251. I think he gives you the ability to play, that 4-3 edge or the 3-4 outside linebacker edge at that position as well, which I think is what Carolina is going to stick with. So definitely do like him as a scheme fit as well. And definitely do like the potential that he could have for this Carolina Panthers defense as soon as next season. Then we move over to the New Orleans Saints. I have them selecting Will Campbell, offensive tackle out of LSU. There are some people that think maybe he transitions to guard. Shout out to NFL Stock Exchange, who even mentioned him as a potential fit at center. I don't think the Saints would roll him out at center, but they have the potential to stick him in at left tackle. I know Trevor Penning really hasn't panned out. Ryan Ramczyk didn't play at all last season with the knee injury that he was coming off of. Will Campbell, just a very, very good, solid player. That Saints offensive line needs some help, and he's just a really solid fit for them overall. Pretty safe bet for this class overall. And I think as you're building out the Saints team, as you're trying to get younger and everything else like that, you want a really solid core nucleus along that offensive line overall. And then we move down to number 10 with the Chicago Bears. I got Shemar Stewart here. Technically, I list him as a defense alignment since he was 282 at the Senior Bowl. He has the potential to play 3-tech or at least slide down in there in pass rushing situations, probably 4-3 defensive end most of the time. But with Dennis Allen coming over as the defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears, he typically likes that bigger defensive end, and I think Shemar Stewart's definitely going to fit the bill here. And, as they're building out this defense, especially in terms of a defensive end across from Montez Sweat, he is a guy that would fit perfectly in this defense overall. Then I have the San Francisco 49ers taking Calvin Banks Jr., offensive tackle out of Texas. He could potentially start his career off as guard, but a potential replacement for Trent Williams whenever he decides to hang up his cleats. Not too much else to say here. Calvin Banks Jr., very good athletic tackle, fits very well in his own scheme, should fit perfectly for this 49ers team overall. Then at number 12, I bit the bullet. I gave Ashton Jeanty the Cowboys. It seems like pretty much every mock draft is doing this, so the Cowboys definitely have a strong need at running back. Jerry Jones, he's going to like that flashy player, and Ashton Jeanty coming off a really great season at Boise State. Obviously, runner-up for the Heisman Trophy. Not too much else to be said. Just a great player. Fits a very, very big need for this Cowboys team overall. Then at 13, we have the Miami Dolphins. I think they could go a lot of different directions, but ultimately ended up on Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. He is a very versatile safety coming off a kind of down year, but should easily replace Javon Holland, who's probably leaving in free agency for this Miami Dolphins team. So a 1-for-1 trade-off there. Definitely do like what he could provide for this defense overall. And then we move down to 14 with the Indianapolis Colts. And I think one of their biggest needs is going to be that cornerback position. There is a lot of different names that you'll see out there. Trey Amos out of Ole Miss is a guy that I do like a ton. I think he would be a very, very good scheme fit for this new Colts defense. Obviously, they got Kenny Moore in the slot. They got Juju Brents, who's barely played in 2 years. Jalen Jones has played pretty well on the outside, considering where he was drafted. But Trey Amos, probably not a guy that's getting as much first-round hype as he should be. But he's a very, very solid corner, and I definitely do like the upside that he could have with this Indianapolis Colts team overall. Then we move over to the Atlanta Falcons. We got Michael Williams, the edge rusher out of Georgia. Guy that mainly played kind of defensive end this year, and I believe he was talked about playing a little bit more off ball, but I think in a 3-4 defense, he would be a great scheme fit here. He does have a ton of upside, and I believe Daniel Jeremiah mentioned in his mock draft that he played banged up this year too as well, dealing with like an ankle injury, so the upside could definitely be there even after a down season, and a guy that the Falcons should know pretty well since he is in their own backyard. Then we'll continue our trend of edge rushers here with the Arizona Cardinals picking James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. He's a guy that was garnering a lot of like top 10 potential coming into the season, was potentially edge rusher number 1. Kind of fell a little bit this year, maybe a little bit undersized for what you would like, but I think he'd be a good scheme fit for the Cardinals. And I think in terms of development guy, the guy that should have some pretty high-end traits, the Cardinals would be a team that would be willing to take a chance on him just overall, and definitely fits a position in need for them at the same time as well. Then at 17, I have the Cincinnati Bengals selecting Walter Nolan, defensive tackle out of Ole Miss. He's a guy that had a really strong Senior Bowl, came in, kind of fit the part. He has very high-end traits, and the Bengals definitely have a need at defensive tackle. They have a need at a lot of spots on defense. Their defense was the major reason they did not make the playoffs this year, so easily slides in for that defense. Hopefully can contribute from day one for the Cincinnati Bengals team overall. Then at 18, I have a pick that I probably have not seen in any other mock draft, but I have the Seattle Seahawks taking tight end Tyler Warren out of Penn State. So Noah Fant's still there. He's been all right, but really hasn't lived up to that first-round hype for the most part. They kind of alternated tight ends behind him. I know they picked up A.J. Barner's kind of blocking tight end. Pharaoh Brown was there as a blocking tight end as well. Tyler Warren's a guy that can come in right away. He can play as your number one tight end. He can block. He can kind of do everything you would ask for him. So I think that would be a very good scheme fit for the Seattle Seahawks overall. It's not one that I see out there a ton, but I definitely do like the upside of Tyler Warren and what he could potentially add for the Seahawks offense. Who could potentially be losing a guy like Tyler Lockett in the offseason at the same time as well. Then at 19, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting Jalen Walker. I have him listed as edge. He kind of played off-ball linebacker for that Georgia team. A guy that does have some versatility, does have some high-end traits, and I think is a guy that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would take a chance on and try to develop, although, some of their edge rushers have been hit or miss in terms of development. Joe Tryon-Shanka has not really panned out, but Yaya Diaby has done pretty well in his time there. So getting another guy to add into that mix, high-end traits there, willing to take a shot on him, definitely could help in terms of their pass rush department. Then at 20, I have the Denver Broncos selecting Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas, a guy that came on very, very strong late in the season. The more and more I look around at mock drafts, it seems like he's popping up as wide receiver number 2. The Denver Broncos, do they definitely need a wide receiver? Technically, no. We drafted Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin. You got Cortland Sutton there who's coming off a strong season. But, if you want to move on for Cortland Sutton who's getting a little bit older, if you want a solid number 2 behind him, Matthew Golden definitely does fit that bill. Not too much else to be said here. Getting more weapons for Bo Nix in that offense definitely does make some sense to me. Then we continue our wide receiver run with Emeka Egbuka for the Pittsburgh Steelers, wide receiver out of Ohio State. And I know typically the Pittsburgh Steelers don't take wide receiver in round 1, but Egbuka is a pro's pro. He's a guy that can come in from day one, give you production, do everything the right way, which is something they haven't truly had from their wide receiver position in a long time, it feels like, because all the guys that they kind of had in there, been a little bit of divas, a little bit of clashing personalities. Next up, I have the Los Angeles Chargers reuniting Jim Harbaugh with one of his former defensive tackles and Kenneth Grant. He's a guy that's going to come in, add some depth to that defensive line right away. Should have a pretty good day one impact. A guy that does have some high-end traits, some high-end upside, and a guy that Jim Harbaugh knows very, very well. So would not be surprised if they end up selecting him, especially in the first round. He's a guy, that's probably closer to round 2 for a lot of other mock drafts, but I definitely do like his upside and that familiarity with Jim Harbaugh and the scheme that he wants to run. Then at 23, I had the Green Bay Packers selecting Gray Zabel, offensive lineman out of North Dakota State. So at North Dakota State, he mainly played offensive tackle, played a little bit of guard early on in his career there, goes down to the Senior Bowl, mainly played interior offensive line there. The Packers are a team that love guys with versatility, whether they play guard, tackle. They have a potential need at center as well, and Gray Zabel did pretty good in terms of his reps at center as well. So with Josh Myers potentially leaving in free agency, which I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. They should have took Creed Humphrey over Josh Myers, but that is a story for a completely different day. Gray Zabel would be a guy that the Packers would love due to his versatility and could fit anywhere along that interior of their offensive line, which is a pretty big need for them overall. Then I have the Minnesota Vikings selecting Shavon Ravel, cornerback out of East Carolina. And I believe the top 3 corners for the Minnesota Vikings are all impending free agents. So they definitely have a need here. I like the upside of Shavon Ravel, and obviously he's coming off an injury. So that is something to kind of monitor what his medical stuff looks like at the NFL Combine. I don't think he's going to test there, but I definitely think he should bounce back in a pretty big way. And he's a guy that is a true competitor. He's kind of worked his way, grinded his way up. And he was a guy that stayed at East Carolina this past season, even though he had better offers from some other Power 4 schools. So definitely do like him, the character, the makeup, everything else like that, and think he would be a pretty good scheme fit for them at the same time as well. Then we move down to the Houston Texans, my favorite team. I got them selecting Luther Burden III, wide receiver from Missouri. He's a guy that's going to come in right away. Stephon Diggs coming off that ACL, probably not coming back to the Texans anyways. Tank Dell obviously coming off of his injury, so there is a need here at wide receiver. Even if Tank Dell comes back fully healthy the same way that he is, you have the ability to move him and Luther Burden, flip them inside, outside, everything else like that. Nico Collins playing the X, Luther Burden or Tank Dell playing the Z or the slot, kind of flip-flopping those guys as you do see fit. Definitely would be a great weapon for CJ Stroud and company. Then I moved down to the Los Angeles Rams. I have them selecting Josh Connerly Jr., offensive tackle out of Oregon. Pretty strong Senior Bowl for him overall. I know everybody mentions the Mike Green rep where he got blown up. He was playing right tackle, which is not the position he's used to. He's always played left tackle. The Rams have Alaric Jackson as a pending free agent at left tackle. Josh Connerly could either come in behind him and then kind of work his way and play right tackle. If they don't bring Jackson back, then obviously he could start day one at left tackle at the same time as well. There are some people that also think he could slide into guard. Definitely do think he would be a good fit for this Rams team overall. Then we move over to the Baltimore Ravens. I think they're going to have a pretty big need at left tackle with Ronnie Stanley probably leaving in free agency after a very, very healthy season. So I have Ariante Ursary here, offensive tackle out of Minnesota. I think he could come in and slide in and play left tackle for them right away. He's kind of that bigger body, good in gap scheme type of player. He had a really good day one at the Senior Bowl, and then it was either day two or day three. It was kind of less than stellar, but I do definitely think he's kind of on that edge of first-round pick, borderline second-round pick. I know some people might prefer a guy like Armand Membu, but I think Membu's more of a guard, either that or right tackle. And I think the Baltimore Ravens would like a guy with some size and the ability to play left tackle overall, unless they're going to move Roger Rosengarten over there, which I don't really see happening. But I definitely think they would like the size and scheme fit of Ursary overall. He just feels like a Ravens type of player. Then we move to 28 with the Detroit Lions. And if there is a player that is a Detroit Lions player, I think it's going to be Tyler Booker. He's one of the top guards in this class. He's out of Alabama. He's a mauler in the run game. He's going to breathe that Lions culture, ground, pound, and bite your kneecaps off, everything else like that. It's a little cliche, but they definitely have a need at that guard position, as they had Kevin Zeitler as kind of that one-year stopgap after losing Jonah Jackson. Definitely think Tyler Booker makes a lot of sense for this Detroit Lions team that doesn't have a lot of holes to fill overall. You could look at cornerback as well, but they did spend some heavy investment in that last season at the same time as well. Then at 29, we have the Washington Commanders. I got Josh Simmons, offensive tackle out of Ohio State here. He is coming off a knee injury, so we'll see what his medicals look like at the combine. He's a guy that should probably be even higher if he was healthy at this point in time, but that left tackle position for the Commanders, they were rotating through like Brandon Coleman and I think it was like Cornelius Lucas or somebody else like that. Not great overall. When I looked at Brandon Coleman last year, I projected him as a guard, and he was not a guy that I really loved. I think Josh Simmons, if he comes back, if he's healthy, he could be the long-term answer at left tackle for this Commanders team overall. At 30, I have the Buffalo Bills selecting Jack Sawyer, defensive end out of Ohio State, and I think he just kind of fits the mold of what the Bills look for in defensive end. He's a guy that's going to be solid in terms of against the run. He's a guy that's going to provide you a little bit of pass rush at the same time as well. Just kind of the type of guy they typically draft, whether it's Gregory Rousseau, AJ Epineza, fills that bill pretty well there, and they could definitely use some extra depth along that defensive line just in general. If you think they go defensive tackle, I think that makes a lot of sense at the same time as well, though. And now we get down to the nitty-gritty. So we have the Kansas City Chiefs. Offensive line really struggled in the Super Bowl versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Left tackle could potentially be an option here. There wasn't anybody that I truly, truly loved for that left tackle. So I have them selecting Donovan Jackson. I technically have him listed as offensive lineman here out of Ohio State. Predominantly played guard, stepped in at left tackle when Josh Simmons went down, but has a little bit of versatility there. Maybe you want to throw him out there at left tackle and just kind of see what he can do, see if he fails there first or not. But you could ultimately throw Tooney out at left tackle full time, have Donovan Jackson play next to him at guard, or just have him replace Trey Smith when he does leave in free agency. The Chiefs definitely need some help on that offensive line. That's one thing that I do know for sure, though. And then last but not least, I have the Philadelphia Eagles, your Super Bowl champions, selecting Donovan Ezeraku, edge rusher out of Boston College. Coming off a really, really strong season, he is the type of player I believe the Philadelphia Eagles would fall in love with. I know Ezeraku, a lot of people probably have projected more in that second round. But I do like what he did this season. Looked pretty solid at the Senior Bowl at the same time as well. Would be a very, very good Josh Sweat replacement for this Philadelphia Eagles team, who definitely do love having pass rushers in general, especially in terms of depth at that position overall, potentially losing Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham this offseason. But with that being said, this is my 2025 mock draft 1.0. Be sure to let me know which picks you guys liked, which picks you didn't like, who you think should be in the first round that I didn't include. I know there's going to be a couple out there. Armand Membu is probably going to be a big one out of Missouri. I think as I'm going through my spreadsheet when I was doing my 7-round mock, in my spreadsheet, I have him currently at like 36. So he's not too far off there. Could be a couple other names. Let me know who you guys think I'm too high on, too low on. Everything else like that. If you enjoyed this mock draft series, be sure to let me know, and I'll try to put another one out after the combine, and then probably another one right before the NFL draft. And with all that being said, definitely do enjoy putting out some NFL draft content. If there's any player in this year's draft class that you want kind of my thoughts or opinions on, be sure to let me know at the same time as well, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. But with that being said, if you're brand new to my channel, checking out for the very first time, or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports. Typically I do more on the DFS side. So if you're into DFS, whether it's NFL DFS, NBA DFS, MLB DFS, UFL DFS, CFL DFS, I got you covered for all 5 of those. Definitely feel free to check out that content if that's something you're into. If it's not something you're into and you want to check it out for the very first time, definitely would appreciate that at the same time as well. And then once again, kind of with the NBA All-Star break, going to be trying to do some NFL draft content here and there in the coming days as well. And we'll be trying to do some NFL draft content in the coming weeks as well, especially as we get closer to the combine, to the NFL draft. Probably do like a winners and losers episode from the NFL combine. Might do some like NFL draft sleepers for this year's class overall. If there's anything else NFL draft related that you would like to see, definitely be sure to mention that down in the comments, and I will take that into consideration for future videos as well. And then last but not least, if you're interested in sports betting, if you're interested in prop betting whatsoever, be sure to check out the links and promo codes down in the description below for BetUS, Parlay Play, and Prize Picks. If you're a brand new user to any one of those 3 sites, when you sign up, make your initial deposit, you will get a first match deposit bonus. For Prize Picks and Parlay Play, it's 100% match up to $100, and then for BetUS, it's 125% match up to $2,000. So some pretty great opportunities to be had out there. If you have any other additional questions related to that whatsoever, feel free to drop a comment on this video or reach out to me on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport, and be more than happy to help you with that journey as well. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have for today's video. Definitely excited for the 2025 NFL Draft.